in collusion and delusion. One of the things she said here, which seemed to be maybe a slip of the tongue, she said, no, we don't have collusion yet, which seems to not be a great message.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the threshold for why the past week was so important is not that it proved something specific, that happened. It's that it opened up a revelation that had been off the table for months now. Consistently, the president and all the top aides and stuff had said, there's nothing here. There's nothing. No one met with anyone. Nobody knows any of these people. This is all just made up. And this proves that that wasn't right. And so there's a whole lot that isn't known now, including what the U.S. intelligence agencies knew about any of this and when they knew it. We still don't know that. Who else was involved? What were these discussions? But the reason why this week is so pivotal is that the entire Republican majority in Congress has been asked to stand by the president and support him through some very difficult times, and has made the calculation that it behooves them to do this, number one, because there was no evidence of anything to the contrary, just a lot of smoke, no fire, right? And number two, because of the belief, the strategic belief that the president's fortunes and their fortunes kind of rise or fall together. This has shaken that very fundamentally in terms of what they can believe, what they want to attach their name to. Not for everyone in the majority, but for enough people that it could become problematic for the White House. The White House needs to be able to keep the confidence of a key number of important Republican lawmakers in the House and Senate. And fundamentally, the revelations this week, because they were a surprise, foundationally shook some of those relationships.
And one of the things some of these, the poll out of the Washington Post shows in terms of how registered voters are seeing this, 60% that believe that Russia tried to influence the election, and 40% believe that the Trump campaign intentionally aided Russia to influence the election. And among the GOP, there's something of a difference. The belief is that 33% believe that Russia tried to influence the election. 33%, not a small amount.
Yeah,
for the GOP.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, the intelligence community has said that Russia did, in fact, try to meddle in the election. The question is whether or not any Trump associates did work and coordinate in any way. And getting back to Margaret's point, I think is an important one, that the number of Republicans on the Hill for months have dismissed the calls or the suggestion that there was collusion, saying there's no evidence, there's no evidence. This Don Jr. meeting doesn't mean that they're rushing to say there's collusion. A number of them said, we need to investigate, we need to look into it. Now they're being a little bit less definitive on their conclusion. Even the Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman, Richard Burr, earlier this summer, I had asked him about collusion. Do you see any evidence there? He said, at this point, I haven't seen a lot of it publicly. I asked him about it in light of the Don Jr. meeting. He said, we need to investigate this further, and we are at the beginning of our investigation.
And that's significant for all of Kellyanne Conway and other advisors to say there's no collusion. The Republicans on Capitol Hill say we need to investigate this to see if there is. But this drip, drip, drip sort of situation for the last, all these weeks. We're at the 6-month point this week. Everyone knows the best time to get anything done in an administration is out of the gate.
Yeah. On
tax reform, on infrastructure and healthcare. They do not have any significant accomplishments. That's why all of this matters here. The sense that there's not been a full sort of sense of all these meetings, a lot of Republicans wish they would just sort of come together. If there are other meetings, let's get them all out there this summer right now. It just hasn't happened.
And this is what we heard from John McCain as well as Trey Gowdy last week on this whole Russia story.
Sucking the oxygen out of the room, everybody knows that. I think it's very difficult when you have this overwhelming barrage of new information that unfolds every few days.
The amnesia of people that are in the Trump orbit. Someone close to the president needs to get everyone connected with that campaign in a room and say, from the time you saw Dr. Zhivago until the moment you drank vodka with a guy named Boris, you list every single one of those, and we're going to turn them over to the special counsel, because this drip, drip, drip is undermining the credibility of this administration.
And Corin, this criticism has been expressed privately, as we all know, among Republicans, but spilling out into the public here with Trey Gowdy.
Yeah, and Trey Gowdy is especially important because he's not only one of the triumvirate of Republicans that was named to take over the investigation from Devin Nunes in the House Intelligence Committee, he also has the gavel now on House Oversight and had been holding back. Maybe he will change his mind about that in terms of looking into this stuff. Look, I think that the poll also reflected something that is unfortunate. We're talking about, excuse me, the Russia probe taking attention away from things like healthcare and other agenda issues. What about just from the issue of Russia and election meddling in general? It's like a willful, to have only 33% of Republicans say that they believe Russia even tried to meddle, not successfully, but tried to, is a willful ignoring of what Russia does all over the world. This is kind of how they choose to project power. They do not have the military power we do. They do not have the economic power they do. They do have the ability to do messaging, and they've been doing it in the satellite, former Soviet Union, former Iron Curtain states, pushing into Europe, now pushing into the United States. And it's become such a Trump story that no one is talking about the fact that this is actually a very big concern for the upcoming elections. And just one other thing on Kellyanne Conway is that somebody is going to screenshot that picture of her holding those two words,
change it,
bring
and
a red
of the White House.
Right,
Yeah,
if
I think I'm sure it's already happened.
Bring a red Sharpie to cross out the collusion thing. Otherwise, everyone's going to use that.
Right.
I do want to throw in two caveats, though. One is that if the president were someone else, without this sort of cloud of Russia questions over him, and they were dealing with cyber concerns or meddling or hacking concerns, only part of it would be a public campaign. Of course, most of what they were doing would be
private,
classified, would never be discussed, would never be discussed with Putin in a meeting, would never be threatened. So it's important to kind of remember that. It doesn't mean they're doing, we don't really know what they're doing, it doesn't mean they're doing nothing. But the second is that I do think that this move to beef up the legal team, both on the outside and on the inside with the naming of Ty Cobb to part of the White House team, is obviously the White House's effort to get their head around this and begin managing it. It probably should have happened several
Right. And you've got you've got Republicans, some Republicans, Dave Brandt, for instance, and here he is talking about Democrats and saying essentially they're getting way ahead of their skis in terms of talking about this.
You got to separate out the political. We have a probe going forward on the Russia piece. On the political piece, if you find a statute that's been violated, then you got it. But, my senators in Virginia are getting, apoplectic. Mark Warner seeing smoke everywhere he goes like he's in a Cheech and Chong movie. And Kane now thinks the sun is worse than Benedict Arnold. I mean, we've gotten a little hysterical, and we should just get grounded.
Well, that's a great line. I mean, no matter
right.
what you think of it.
Yeah.
So that just shows you that even as some Republicans want to look at this further, there are still a number who say there's still nothing there, and Democrats may be going too far and pushing this line.
Also, Mark Warner is so straight-laced with the idea of administration.
Yeah. Next, from frenemies to besties. Presidents Trump and Macron shake on it for a long time. How France's leader wooed Trump on the world stage.
Today we're at Eats.
Everywhere he goes, the Russia story follows. The president's son now caught in its current.
This is all of it. This is everything. This is everything.
Shifting explanations and a growing number inside the room at a meeting with Russians.
I think it's a meeting that most people in politics probably would have taken.
And after a long goodbye, the president returns home to a stalled Senate and an unfulfilled health care campaign promise.
I am sitting in the Oval Office with a pen in hand waiting for our senators to give it to me.
Inside politics, the biggest stories sourced by the best reporters now. Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Mia Malika Henderson, filling in for John King. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, thanks for sharing a bit of your Sunday with us. The Russia revelations keep coming from the Trump White House. First came last weekend's story about a 2016 meeting involving Donald Trump Jr., other members of Team Trump, and a Russian lawyer. Trump Jr. then releases a statement and claims the meeting was about Russian adoption. And a few days later, his story changes with the release of Trump Jr.'s emails with publicist Rob Goldstone, who set up the meeting. The emails reveal the president's son took the meeting after being told that the lawyer had Kremlin ties and would offer up dirt on Hillary Clinton. And on the same day the emails come out, this from Donald Trump Jr.
So as far as you know, as far as this incident is concerned, this is all of it. This is everything. This is everything.
But it wasn't everything. CNN has now learned there were more people in that meeting than previously reported, perhaps at least 8. We now know the meeting included Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and then campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Also in the room, the Russian lawyer and publicist Rob Goldstone, who helped set up the encounter. On Friday, a Russian-American lobbyist revealed he was also present. And a source tells CNN possibly 2 others were there as well, a translator and a representative of a Russian family that asked Goldstone to reach out to the Trump campaign. President Trump has called the idea of collusion between his team and Russia a hoax and a witch hunt. But on Thursday, he took a somewhat different approach while defending his son.
I have a son who's a great young man. He's a fine person. He took a meeting with a lawyer from Russia. It lasted for a very short period, and nothing came of the meeting. And I think it's a meeting that most people in politics probably would have taken.
The president is awake this morning and tweeting about fake news again, but this isn't a fake poll. The latest Washington Post ABC News survey shows the president's approval rating has fallen to a dismal 39% among registered voters, and it's even lower, 36% among all Americans. With us to share their reporting and their insights, CNN's Jeff Zeleny, Karin Demerjen of The Washington Post, Margaret Talev of Bloomberg, and CNN's Manu Raju. Thanks for being with us this morning. Jeff, I'm going to start with you. It feels like in some ways the word bombshell may have been overused in terms of this Russia story, but in this instance, bombshell might be an appropriate word to use when you think about the meeting, the contents of the meeting, and the shifting stories about the substance of the meeting and who was in there.
I think it probably is appropriate. And, you know, there have been so many incremental developments in this entire Russia story, but I think let's take stock of the last week. And this indeed is a different moment, a different set of information we've learned, because we've learned for the first time, if we go a week ago to what we were discussing, we didn't have the contents of the emails. Really what you think about has come up in the last week is pretty extraordinary. It marks the first time that someone from the Trump campaign accepted a meeting with someone from the Russian government or someone who is representing them. Now, this is something we still do not know if there was actually any information that was exchanged, but it shows the willingness to open the door to that. And it shows the fact that no one thought that there was anything wrong with doing that. And it also shows that it has taken this Trump inner circle. This is what frustrates people inside the White House so much, many people. It has taken them day after day after day after day to explain this. There have been 4 different versions of events, and now we're still finding out at least 8 people in the room. That's not what the president's oldest son said when he was on Fox earlier this week. So this is why that investigators on Capitol Hill, Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican of Iowa, wants to talk to the president's oldest son. So this week is it marks a turning point in this, and we're only at June 9th, 2016 in the campaign. We do not know if they had other meetings. We don't know what other emails are out there. It showed that they were willing to listen, and that is unusual. Despite what the president says it's standard practice, it's not standard practice.
And we're still learning more about what happened here, too, because 2 weeks ago, our colleague at CNN, Evan Perez, reached out to the White House, informed them that he was aware about what happened here. And then what happened the next day? There was a $50,000 payment from the Trump campaign to Donald Trump Jr.'s attorney. We're learning more about that information as well. But
which means he hired him on that.
Exactly. And are we saying the president, who said he only learned it a couple of days ago, did he learn at that point? We don't know exactly. We don't know the full story about what the president knew and when he knew it, to use to coin a phrase.
Yeah.
But there are. When I interviewed Adam Schiff on Friday, the top Democrat in the House Intelligence Committee, he did not know who was in the meeting. He did not know whether or not this Russian-American